You have felt it before. That moment when something happens and before you have even made a conscious decision, the reaction is already there. The anger, the anxiety, the resentment, the sudden spiral of thoughts that takes something small and turns it into something consuming. And then it passes, and you look back and realize that the emotion made the decision for you, not your values, not your judgment, not the person you are trying to become. The emotion, that is not a character flaw, that is biology. The human brain was wired to react before it was wired to reflect. In a world of predators and survival, that reflex kept people alive. But you are not running from predators. You are navigating a career, a family, relationships, ambitions, disappointments, and a world that constantly produces events designed to provoke you. And in that world, the person who reacts is at the mercy of everything around them. But the person who responds, the one who has learned to create space between what happens and what they do next, that person holds a different kind of power. The Stoics called this the most important discipline of all. Not wealth, not status, not intelligence, the mastery of your own inner world. Today we go there, not to suppress what you feel, but to stop being controlled by it. Part 1. The illusion of emotional honesty. There is a popular idea in modern culture that says you should always express what you feel, that holding back is repression, that full emotional expression is the same thing as authenticity. The Stoics would disagree, sharply. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Begin the morning by saying to yourself, I shall meet with meddling, ungrateful, violent, treacherous, envious, uncharitable people. All of these things happen to them by reason of their ignorance of what is good and evil." He was not suppressing his awareness of difficulty. He was preparing his mind in advance so that when difficulty arrived, it would not catch him off guard and pull him into reaction. That is the distinction between feeling and being controlled by feeling, between awareness and surrender. Emotional honesty is valuable. Emotional reactivity is costly. And most people confuse the two. When you shout in anger, that is not honesty. That is your nervous system making decisions that your character would not endorse. When you spiral into anxiety for hours over something you cannot control, that is not sensitivity. That is your attention being stolen from everything that actually matters. The Stoics were not emotionless. Marcus grieved. Seneca admitted fear. Epictetus endured suffering that would break most people. But they refused to let those emotions become the author of their actions. That refusal is the practice. Part 2. What emotions are actually telling you? Here is something important that gets lost in conversations about emotional control. Emotions are not the enemy, they are information. Fear is telling you that something feels threatening. Anger is telling you that something feels unjust. Sadness is telling you that something you valued has been lost. Anxiety is telling you that uncertainty is present. The problem is not the signal. The problem is what most people do with it. They do not read the information and respond intelligently. They become the information. They dissolve into it. They let the signal override every other faculty they have. Epictetus taught that between every event and every response, there is a space, a gap. And inside that gap lives your freedom, your choice, your capacity to act from your values rather than your reactions. Most people never find that gap. The event happens and the reaction is immediate and automatic. There is no pause, no examination. No moment where the thinking mind gets to weigh in before the emotional mind has already taken action. But that gap can be trained. It can be widened, not through suppression, through practice, through the discipline of pausing before responding, of asking, what is this emotion actually telling me and what does my best self want to do with that information? That question alone changes everything. When you feel anger rising, pause. Ask, what value of mine feels violated right now? That is the real message. Work with that message. Do not work with the heat. When anxiety arrives, pause. Ask, what specifically am I afraid of, and is that thing actually within my control? If it is not, then your anxiety is spending energy in a place that will never return it. The emotion is the signal. You are not the signal. You are the one deciding what to do with it. Part 3. The cost of being reactive. Let us be honest about what emotional reactivity actually costs you. When you respond to a difficult person with immediate anger, you hand them control. They said or did something, and now your mood, your focus, your energy, all of it belongs to them. You are the one suffering. They have moved on. Seneca wrote, "How much more harmful are the consequences of anger than the circumstances which aroused it?" Think about the last time you reacted strongly to something. How long did the reaction last? How much of your mental and emotional energy did it consume? And how much of that was actually productive? How much of that actually changed the situation? In most cases, the answer is clear. The reaction cost far more than the original event. The event lasted a moment. The reaction lasted hours, sometimes days. And this is not about isolated incidents. Reactive people build reactive lives. Every relationship they have is shaped by their inability to regulate themselves. Every opportunity they miss because they could not hold their composure in the moment it mattered. Every decision they make from a place of emotion that their calmer self would never endorse. Reactivity is expensive, and most people pay that price so automatically they have stopped noticing it. Marcus Aurelius asked himself regularly, "Is this within my control?" If the answer was no, he refused to give it his peace. Not because he did not care, because he understood that caring in the form of anxiety or anger over things outside his control was a form of self-harm disguised as concern. You cannot control what other people do. You cannot control outcomes. You cannot control timing, weather, luck, or the choices of others. You can control your response, always. Without exception. That is the only jurisdiction you truly have. Operate there. Protect that ground fiercely. Part 4. The practice of the pause. So how do you actually build this? How do you create that gap between stimulus and response when biology is pulling you toward immediate reaction? You practice it in small moments so it is available in large ones. The first tool is breath. When you feel a strong emotion beginning to rise, before you speak, before you act, before you send the message or make the call, take one slow, deliberate breath. Just one. That single breath interrupts the automatic chain. It sends a signal to your nervous system that you are still in command. It sounds almost embarrassingly simple, and yet most people never do it, because in the moment, the emotional pull feels urgent. It feels like responding immediately is necessary. It almost never is. The second tool is delay. Seneca advised writing down what you feel before you act on it. Not to publish it, not to send it, just to get it out of the body and onto something external where you can look at it. When you write what you feel, you create distance from it. It is no longer just inside you. It is something you can examine, something you can read back and evaluate with more clarity than you had when it was just heat in your chest. The third tool is the question. Before you respond to anything that has provoked a strong reaction, ask yourself, will this action align with the person I am trying to become? Not the person I am when I am frustrated, the person I am at my best, the one I respect when I look back on my choices. That question is an anchor. It connects you back to your values at the exact moment when your emotions are trying to disconnect you from them. These are not complicated tools, but they require repetition. They require you to practice them on the small provocations, so they are instinctive when the large ones arrive. Part 5. Silence as a form of strength. There is a specific kind of emotional mastery that almost no one talks about, the mastery of knowing when to say nothing. In most conflicts, most difficult conversations, most moments of provocation, the person who responds immediately is at a disadvantage. They reveal their emotional state. They hand over information about what affects them. They invite escalation. The person who pauses, who chooses silence deliberately, who responds slowly and from a place of composure, that person is operating from an entirely different level. Marcus Aurelius practiced what he called returning to himself. When he felt pulled by emotion, by frustration with advisors, by the chaos of war, by the grief of losing children, he returned to himself first, to his values, to his reason, to the question of what a good person would do in this moment. And then he spoke, or sometimes he did not speak at all. Silence is not weakness. In a culture that rewards immediate reaction, choosing silence is one of the most countercultural and powerful things a person can do. It says, I am not at the mercy of what just happened. I am choosing how I respond to it. And that choice requires more from me than an immediate reaction, so I am going to take what I need. That is composure. That is what the Stoics meant when they talked about the inner citadel, the place inside you that cannot be disturbed by external events, because you have built and maintained it through consistent practice. Silence can be your most powerful response. Learn to use it. Part 6. Building the emotional architecture. Emotional mastery is not a state you arrive at. It is a structure you build. And like any structure, it requires regular maintenance. Here is what that maintenance looks like in practice. In the morning, before the world has a chance to make demands on you, spend 5 minutes in deliberate stillness, not scrolling, not planning. Just present with your own mind. Notice what is already running in the background. What concerns are already there before the day has even started. Name them. Do not engage them. Just name them and set them aside. This practice alone reduces reactivity significantly, because most of what makes us reactive during the day is not the day itself. It is the unexamined anxiety we carried into it. Throughout the day, whenever you notice a strong emotional response building, use the 3 tools: breath, delay, question, in that order, every time, even when it feels unnecessary, especially when it feels unnecessary, because the moments when it feels unnecessary are exactly the moments when your guard is down and reactivity is most likely. In the evening, review, not with judgment, with honesty. Where did you respond well today? Where did your emotions make a decision that your values would not have endorsed? What would you do differently? This is not self-criticism, it is calibration. The Stoics called it the evening review. Seneca practiced it without exception, not to punish himself, but to understand himself more clearly, so tomorrow could be better than today. Over time, this practice does something remarkable. It makes you less surprised by your own reactions. You start to see the patterns. You start to recognize the specific triggers, the specific types of situations and people that reliably pull you off center. And when you can see a pattern, you can prepare for it. You can meet it with intention instead of reaction. That is when the practice stops being effortful and starts being who you are. Closing. Here is the truth that the Stoics return to again and again. You will never control the world. You will never control other people. You will never control outcomes, timing, or circumstance. But you will always have dominion over your own mind, over your own response, over the space between what happens and what you do next. That space is where your freedom lives, not in external achievement, not in the approval of others, not in circumstances finally cooperating, in your own mind, disciplined, clear, unshaken. Marcus Aurelius built an empire and lost children and fought wars and governed millions, and he came back to this truth every single morning. Not because it was easy, because it was the only thing that was truly his, and it is the only thing that is truly yours. Stop giving your peace away to things that do not deserve it. Stop letting the weather of other people's behavior determine the climate of your inner world. Stop reacting from the surface of yourself when your depth is what you actually have to offer. The emotion is not you. It is a signal passing through you. Read it, use it, and then return to the person you have chosen to be. That is the practice. That is the power. And it is available to you right now, in this moment. Before anything else changes, start there. If this reached something real in you, leave a comment below. Write one word. The emotion you are committing to master. Just one word. Own it publicly. Subscribe to Stoic Journal and turn on the bell. Every week content built for people doing the real work. Until next time, choose your response, choose yourself.